Citizen Panel. This is one of our most popular segments of the show, This and the Jagoff, according to our viewer email. Joining me in studio is Doug Sain. He's a president and producer of Sain Films. You also worked with Dinesh D'Souza on the movie 2016.
Correct.
Also in studio is Ernie White. He sits in for me once in a while when I'm out of town. And you are with Citizens Against Agenda 21.
Yes, nice to be back.
Last time I said you're with Citizens for Agenda 21.
You said we were for Agenda 21. No, we're actually against Agenda 21.
Sometimes there's a lot of words in those titles.
Too many words.
And also in studio is Jan Ronas, federal defense attorney, legal analyst, and unabashed supporter of President Obama.
Thank you.
All right. So big news today, of course, is military action. Combat returns to Iraq. President Obama pulled us out in 2011, and all hell broke loose in that part of the world, from a Christian Holocaust to Iran's influence rising to ISIS, the Islamic radical state, creating their own group, founding their own state. Doug, what concerns me about this is that we had White House reporter Neil Monroe on earlier. He believes that this is all political theater ahead of November's 2014 election. If we see a big ramp up in commitment by the president, which we don't even know what the objective is here yet, if we see a ramp up in commitment, then we know this president is committed to saving lives of those under attack in Iraq. But if it's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, unfortunately, he may be right. What's your take on all this?
Well, it's a retreat of the retreat. You know, he at one time wanted to retreat. He thought we should be out of Iraq, and now he's retreating on that retreat because he realizes that a complete collapse in Iraq would be devastating for him.
So you agree with our White House reporter, Neil Monroe, that this is all politics?
Well, it has to be. I mean, I would hope he's enough of a humanitarian to realize that he needs to have the military involved in order to prevent ISIS from, causing probably genocide underneath, which they seem to have the prerogative to do. But, it goes back, it's in his interest to prevent a complete collapse there, which after the strength that we had shown, we could provide. It's a very sad situation. This, it's not good for him politically as well, because his own left is going to retreat from him now.
Well, let's go to Jan. Jan Ronas, I know you've been a big supporter of the president. We're hearing that those on the left are pretty upset right now. How do you feel as an individual citizen who we saw the president run on ending the wars? Now you see us back over there. What are your personal thoughts?
Well, listen, your introductory statement was all hell broke loose after they pulled American troops out. Quite frankly, all hell broke loose when Bush invaded Iraq, which I think was the biggest blunder that this United States has probably made in 100 years.
Let me interject. I respect your opinion. Let me interject. The problem was solved when President Barack Obama took over in 2009. After the surge, the problem was solved. But go ahead.
Well, the problem it wasn't solved in perpetuity. It certainly ameliorated for a while. But look, it's a hotbed of so many different influences over there. The fact is, Iraq is either going to collapse or not collapse. But the United States can't commit many more resources to trying to prop up that government, which may have some inevitable
How do you feel about the return of military action today?
I think given the limited scope of what the president's trying to do, particularly with respect to the Kurds that are stuck up there in the northern part of the country who need his support, I think if on a limited basis, I support it. But beyond that, if as they say, boots on the ground, I would not be in favor of that.
Before we pull Ernie into the conversation, one final question. If we see limited action, as you said you would prefer to see, up until the election, and then no action after the election, which is what our White House guest had said earlier, do you feel how would you feel about that?
Well, of course, if that's what I saw, I would be disappointed in the president. I don't anticipate that. I think his motives are genuine. I think he wants to intervene humanitarianly, and I think that the results hopefully will be good if they can return the Kurds to their position that they enjoyed a week ago.
Ernie White, real quick, weigh in briefly on this. Your thoughts? Jan Rona says the President Bush is sent this thing into a mess, and President Obama just inherited it.
No, I think that Islam needs to be crushed. I think that the terrorists need to be crushed. I think that when they kidnap those girls, Boko Haram, they need to be crushed. I think when the Christians are being killed throughout the whole Middle East, those terrorists need to be crushed. I think that, again, when the women are seeing female mutilations throughout the Middle East, those people that are doing that need to be crushed. We need to crush that enemy, be done with that enemy, be serious about that enemy, because they're not going to stop until you crush them.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that from this president. All right, so now the other big issue, of course, in case anyone's missed it the last 8 weeks, it's called the border crisis. Let's start with Doug Sain. Doug, we had on Ursula Kuster, an immigrant to this country from Germany, earlier in the show, and she said, look, I do not support what either the Republicans or Democrats have done on the immigration issue in this nation, and I do not support those people coming over the border illegally. They are a drain on the economy, and they're a drain on resources. How can Republicans address that without sounding like intolerant, narrow-minded, bigoted racists?
Well, I think we're not going to know until after the election in November. The key is that you have the Democrats want to, in a sense, filibuster this issue because it makes them look good and makes the Republicans look bad. The Republicans, on the same time, they don't control the Senate, so they can't move legislation even if they wanted to, unless they want to completely capitulate, which they're not willing to do, and nor should the public want them to do. So, voters have the opportunity to change the dynamic in November. If the Republicans are to gain the Senate, which I think most people anticipate that they will, you would have the opportunity for legislation to come before Obama that's likely to resolve this in a multitude of ways. And at that point, then, it's going to be the president versus the entire Congress.
Let's go to Jan Ronas on us, federal defense attorney. Jan, I know that whether we all may disagree in certain aspects of the immigration crisis, I know you don't support, like anyone else does, those with criminal records just walking around south of the border. There's reports out today that there are cartel members walking around in South Texas in Army fatigues. Those that are here illegally with criminal records, as a federal defense attorney, what do you believe our government, Congress, the White House, that doesn't matter to me, what should they be doing to address that?
Listen, everyone that's here that has a criminal record that's subject to deportation ought to be picked up and deported. And there are laws in place. They're doing that on a daily basis in this country. But, you can't, it's somewhat difficult to capture these people, but when they do, they're deported. But look, the immigration crisis has a solution, and the solution is that which has been offered by the Democratic Party, and that is to offer a pathway to residency and citizenship to the 11 million people that are in this country without documentation. It's nonsense to suggest that you could ask 11 million people to leave the United States. Quite frankly, the economy, because these people contribute to the economy, whether it's above ground or underground, the economy would probably collapse with the absence of 11 million workers.
One second. We'll get the response of Ernie White, Doug Sain on the other side of the break. Some are saying that they're bringing down the wages of the economy, but we'll get both the responses. And Ernie is a Murrieta, California protester, so I'm sure you want to weigh in on this. To our viewers at home, if you want to continue the conversation after the show with our panel members or myself, then you can tweet me at Amato Talk. You can also tweet, what's your Twitter name, Doug Sain?
DG Sane.
And Ernie White?
God bless 2016.
And we're going to be showing your Twitter name underneath your name. Jan, you don't have a Twitter account.
I don't tweet or don't have a Twitter account.
So if you want to tweet myself, Doug Sain, Ernie White, to continue the conversation after the show, you can do so. We're back with more to get the response to Jan Ronas' comments with our grassroots citizen panel right after this. Welcome back, everybody. We are in the middle of our grassroots citizen panel. Just before the break, Jan Ronas was commenting that before we solve this border crisis, we've got to talk about legalizing a path to citizenship for those 11 million illegals who are currently here. I saw Doug saying Ernie White jumping in her seat. Ernie, you are, for our viewers who may not be aware, you are have been one of the leading protesters in Murrieta, California. You live in a neighboring community. What's your response? I mean, that is not, to me, I'm not saying I agree with what Jan Ronas said, but I do not believe it's an extreme position to say that, wait a minute, we gotta do something for these folks that have put roots down here. What's your response to Jan?
Well, I just want to say, like, out in the Murrieta situation out here in Murrieta, California, where they stood in front of the buses, they weren't standing in front of the buses against the 11 million that were here. They weren't even standing in front of the buses against the children that we're hearing about that are coming here. They were standing in front of the buses to protect the children that are here, to protect us from diseases, to protect us from the criminals that are coming across. No no one is telling us who's coming across and what diseases that are coming across. Now we're hearing about Ebola. We're not even checking for Ebola. We have TB now here. We have scabies here. They were standing
hoof and mouth, whatever that is.
Whatever that is that it has something to do with a horse? I don't know. But the point was, seriously, it's not about the 11 million. And again, I would like to ask Jan and everybody else on his side, when is enough? Like, how many people do we open our borders to? Do you want it fully open?
This is the wealthiest
country. Right now, that border is fully open.
This is the wealthiest country on earth. Tunisia, Jordan, parts of Turkey have opened up to millions of refugees.
So you say that we should open up to everybody?
No, but if the wealthiest country on earth can at least accommodate 70 or 100,000 children who are fleeing problems that this country created in the 80s, then our country doesn't stand by the principles.
Did we create problems with Hamas?
We created problems. We were engaged in mischief in Central America in the 80s, which has manifested itself in the instability in that region today, from which these children are fleeing and need protection in this country.
The left always says it's America's fault. It's, you know, with the exception of Ernie, we're white and we're just bad guys. Ernie might get a pass on that one.
Right, I'm going to take a pass because I
40 years ago in the 80s we created this problem according to Jan Rodas, and I know you're not happy with that.
Well, I mean, I think it's outrageous to sit there and say that, you know, everything we, you know, I mean, on one hand, it's anything we do isn't enough in a foreign country like the Middle East, but if we did something 40 years ago, in Central America, it's the chickens have come home to roost. I think I've heard that before.
It was a destabilizing effort on our part, which ultimately resulted in manifested us well.
I don't think
listen,
it was
to undermine democratically elected governments, to mine harbors, to armed contras. It was a catastrophe.
All right, Jan Rodas, in addition to saying that America caused today's problem by intervening in the 80s in Central America, you also said a week or two ago when we covered Murrieta, you said, look, it looks to me like there's an awful lot of angry white guys protesting in Murrieta. Ernie White led that protest, one of the leaders.
That's right.
Does he look like an angry white guy to you?
Well, no, he doesn't, but it actually causes me more consternation to accept the fact that he's... Yes, listen, I never saw such hate-mongering in my life, and that sent a message around the world, and it was a message that these children get out of here.
It had nothing to do with children.
Well, they were only
nothing
children.
to do with children.
Listen,
what about the MS-13 that are coming across that border? What will the left do when the MS-13 and what are we going to do with Hamas refugees coming across that border? What are you going to do with the Iraqi refugees coming across that border?
Secure the border. I'm not saying an open border. Of course, you can secure it. You can't. It's not a perfect world. There are going to be people coming across.
You call those people in Marietta who are standing up for their country. You're calling them hate mongers.
They were hate mongers.
They are not hate mongers.
You're calling Ernie White a hate monger.
I'm suggesting he is out there that he should be ashamed of himself.
No, you should be ashamed of yourself for taking this country where it's gone with your left side.
For trying to support children that have come to this country.
Before we switch gears, we now find that President Obama's polling numbers on immigration issue are suffering from the left and the right, including ethnic communities are saying, look, you're selling out our communities. We do not. We have a high unemployment rate within certain ethnic communities. We have resources that are not being spent on schools and so forth. We're watching left and right, Ernie, Doug, and Jan, rise up against what this president is doing on the border. That is a perfect transition to what is happening in Russia. The Russians are mocking President Obama with a racist laser projection. If you haven't seen it, there's a laser projection of cyber buildings. Russian college students, I believe it is, showing a banana going in and out of, looks like a monkey. Vladimir is disgusting. Even though I disagree with President Obama on just about everything he does, I'm outraged by this, but I'm even further outraged by no comments by Vladimir Putin. To me, Ernie White, that shows the weakness of the American president.
It shows the weakness of the American president because, number one, we had an airplane that was shot down out there and nothing has been done about it. And right now you've got Russia trying to pull our strings to see if we are a strong country. But as you can see, because of the left, we are no longer that strong country. They can make a mockery out of us because it's words like this that say that we're like these horrible people just because we want to try to protect the citizens of our nation.
Ernie White.
Because we want to protect our citizens. We are hate mongers.
Your take on this story.
Well, what I think it shows is that the Russian people and government don't have a long tradition and history of civility, and this just shows the incivility.
I would agree with that.
That's been manifested by what you've suggested.
Doug Singh?
It's shameless. I don't think it would have ever happened to a president like Reagan, who would have, demonstrated that he means what he says. And Obama, I think, through the experience with Syria, demonstrated he doesn't mean what he says.
Oh, that red line. All right. I want to thank our panel members, legal defense attorney and Obama supporter Jan Ronas. We're all supporters of the U.S. president. I just point out that he's on the left, that's all. Ernie White, when I say supporters of the U.S. president as a concept. Ernie White, Citizens Against Agenda 21, protester in Murrieta, California, and film producer, president of Sane Films, Doug Sane. I want to thank each of you gentlemen for being part of our Grassroots Citizen panel. And I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. We're right back at you again Monday night, same time, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. And now I leave you with my Amato.